Well, the big secret is finally out. Dana White is officially involved in boxing. The announcement was made today in New York. TKO Group Holdings, which owns the UFC and the WWE, announced a partnership with Turki Alalshikh, Ring Magazine, and Sella, and that will be the creation of a new boxing league. Details other than that are sparse. We don't know the name of the league. We don't know the fighters that are signed to the league. We do not know when boxing will take place under this new league's banner. Some of the things that they announced is that the athletes, they're going to have a developmental program to try to create new athletes. They're going to give the athletes access to the UFC Performance Institutes, which are located in Las Vegas, Shanghai, and Mexico City at this point. They have some others in the works that they are going to build, but right now those are the three that are up and running. And so it's interesting because I think boxing needed something. Things are headed mostly in the right direction in boxing, but this is about boxing in the United States. Boxing in the rest of the world isn't as bad off as it is in the US. Think about it in England. They do great on boxing. The media is all over coverage there. Last year for the Daniel Dubois Anthony Joshua fight, they had nearly 100,000 people. It was over 96,000 attendance at Wembley Stadium. The Chris Eubank Jr. Nigel Benn fight that is coming up next month in April, that is going to have a crowd of about 65,000 or so there. In Japan, Naoya Inoue is such a huge star. They had 56,000 for one of his recent fights at the Tokyo Dome, and the gate was over 20 million US dollars. That shows you that boxing is in a pretty good place elsewhere around the world. But in the United States, it is still way at the bottom of the list. And when you look at just, you see very few media outlets other than YouTubers that are covering boxing anymore. You don't see the major newspapers. When I started in boxing, there were a lot of newspapers that were around. There was at least two in almost every major city, and almost every single one of them had boxing writers. You had at least two in New York. You had Chicago, you had Boston, you had Pittsburgh, you had Philadelphia, you had Los Angeles, Phoenix, Las Vegas. And you just went through this list of all these boxing writers that were everywhere. And there was constantly boxing coverage in the news. And that really does not exist now, except on boxing centric websites like my own, KevinIole.com, and on YouTube. But you do not have that in the mainstream media. And that really hurts the efforts to make other grow the business, make more fans. I did a story, and I will put a link to it in the description, in January, where I found an interview on YouTube with former heavyweight champion Rocky Marciano. It was filmed the day before his death in 1969, and Marciano was talking about the problems that existed in boxing. And those problems that existed, in Marciano's opinion, in 1969 are the ones that we are still talking about today, right? Those are the big issues that they have not been solved. Boxing goes up and down, and when there's some big fights like Mayweather Pacquiao or Tyson Holyfield, you get a lot of people that are interested, but on an ongoing basis, it's not like the other sports. Certainly UFC has blown past it, just on a consistent basis. UFC has interest in its shows all the time, and that's helped grow the sport of mixed martial arts. And you don't have that same kind of interest in the United States that you do for all these other sports, and that used to exist in the past. So it's hard to really know how big this deal is. I have a feeling that it's going to be a big day for boxing, though, because if Dana White gets involved and he can remake it in his image, and what he wants, and he has the funding of the Saudis and Turkey Alalshikh, and we've seen what they have been able to do in a very short period of time. I think this could be really good for the sport of boxing in the United States. Like, let's take the Riyadh season shows and everything that's been happening. There have been a lot of great fights. Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk have fought twice. Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol have fought twice for the undisputed light heavyweight championship. They have put on so many big and really compelling fights. But when they do that, they largely ignore the US market. They are not promoting to the US market. The US is clearly an afterthought, and they're starting fights at odd times in the US market. Starting here, I live in Las Vegas. The fights are starting at 8:30 in the morning, Las Vegas time. The main event's going off at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Las Vegas time. And while that I think would be okay, and that used to be the case years ago, fans have gotten used to it being held differently. So I think if Dana White gets involved and he can solve some of those problems, he can bring some interest in the United States and create some excitement, and have this thing start running on its own. They're going to create rankings that they're going to have, and they're going to have the fighters, compete on a regular basis and have like ranked fighters fight. So if you are ranked ninth in a division, you might fight number 8, you might fight number 10. And we're going to get to see people who are qualified then at the top of the rankings. And we're not going to see people get their titles yanked from them indiscriminately. That really is something that hurts boxing so much. I mean, there's certain things that aren't going to be changed. Right now, depending on the organization, there are either 17 or 18 weight classes that are out there. If you count Bridgerweight in the WBC, there's 18 weight classes. And when you look at it and you say there are 4 sanctioning bodies, WBA, WBC, WBO, and IBF, that means 17 times 4, you're getting 68 different people who have the opportunity to call themselves a world champion. How is a fan supposed to understand that? How is a fan supposed to follow that? And then you have these sanctioning bodies stripping people. The IBF has been, or forcing them to give up their belts. The IBF has been the worst at that recently. They forced Canelo Alvarez to give up the super middleweight championship. They forced Alexander Usyk to give up the undisputed heavyweight championship. They forced Terrence Crawford to give up the undisputed welterweight championship. And we fight so hard to see the best guys fight, and then we get a winner out of that, a definitive winner in all those cases. And we have Terrence Crawford as the undisputed welterweight champion, and he has to give up the IBF title almost immediately because they want him to fight somebody that doesn't really matter. The same thing happened with Usyk. He had to give up the undisputed heavyweight championship that he won in the ring from Tyson Fury, and now that's why Daniel Dubois has that belt. And so that has to end, because that is confusing to the fans. That is confusing to the public. We who follow boxing on a daily basis get confused by this. How do you think people who have real lives and are doing things in their life, how do you think they feel about what is going on? So, I think that just solving that problem and having, like you see in the UFC, a UFC champion. There are other champions in MMA. There's the PFL, there's the LFA, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of leagues, but the UFC champion is considered the champion in MMA. And I think whatever this new league is called, if we can get to a point where the champions of this new league are the champions in boxing, that is really what we want. That the Ring Magazine belt is supposed to denote who is the legit champion. Now, I have had a problem with the Ring Magazine belt, not in theory, but I have always felt journalists should not be the ones doing this, right? And so journalists were giving out, when Ring Magazine was independent, they were giving out championship belts and setting up matches, and I just didn't think that was the place of a journalist. Do we call Ring a journalism outfit right now? They have people who have been good journalists working for them, but given that Turki Alalshikh is now the owner of it, he is the big principal in Riyadh season and all these boxing matches that are going on, and now partnering with TKO in this new group. Is Ring still considered a journalistic outlet? I don't say that with any malice toward any of my colleagues that have worked there and have done good work, who work there now and have done good work over the years. But, look, Turkey went online and he admitted that he planted false information so that he could get the Canelo Alvarez signing done, as one example. So maybe the ring belt now, for people who felt like I did before and didn't look at that with the same significance, maybe we'll say the ring belt is the belt that will have the significance going forward. But whatever it is, we need to have one champion in boxing. I mean, it's good to have contenders. It's good to have people that are recognized as the elite challengers. But to have one champion, not four in a division, and not potentially 68 champions across all of these divisions. I also think Dana White is going to bring a level of professionalism in the way that they promote. I can tell you as somebody who covers both boxing and MMA, it is not even close. The UFC spends more money on promotion and marketing, and they do it better than anybody in boxing. Eddie Hearn is doing a very good job, and Eddie himself um, does is out there a lot in the media, but he is mostly with the UK media, right? Eddie is not big with the US media. And he's not that accessible to the US media. Um, but when you get Dana White involved in there, you're going to have it promoted at a very high level. And I think that that is something that is significant because it's one thing to have a great product, but if people don't know about it, then it doesn't really matter. So you've got to get to work marketing it and doing the PR for it. They are two distinctly different things, but they both have to happen. So I wish I could tell you what fight was going to be first. I think what we're going to see, though, is we will see TV deals announced pretty soon. I would not be shocked at all to see the deal announced that they're going to have some fights on Netflix and they will have some fights on ESPN. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think what will end up happening to a large degree is you will see them use other promoters' fighters at the beginning. So they'll put other promoters and have them co-promote with them on card, but eventually they will try to narrow it down that fighters that are under their contract, like the UFC does now, will just fight in that organization and they won't go outside. But what we want is we want to see on a regular basis the best fighting the best. And the one thing that I hate to think of would be that eventually we get to a point where we're separated still, where all the fighters in the new TKO league are going to stay there and not go in that other lane, and vice versa. We need to have the best fighters fighting each other on a regular basis, and we need to let people know about it. It's going to be very interesting. Stay tuned. There is going to be a lot to talk about over the next few months. I am supposed to be talking to Dana White tomorrow. Today is Wednesday, March 5th. So I am supposed to interview Dana on Thursday, March 6th. So look for that interview. I will be sure to ask him about this. I'm not sure he's going to have too many answers, but I will be sure to ask him that. And we will move forward. We will stay on top of this and let you know what we know as fighters are signed and rules and names and things like that. TV deals are brought into play. But I do think it's a good day for boxing. Boxing in the United States in particular, it's big around the rest of the world. We need to get it back to that level in the United States. And this, I think, could be a really good first step for it. Hope you enjoyed all. We will talk to you soon. Have a great day.